And now on Who's Views, a Doctor Who fan joins JT for a little chit-chat.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Who's Views. This one is Chit Chat, and look who's joining me for a chit chat today. It's this one here, it's Andy. Hello Andy.
Hi JT, hi everyone.
Listen, thank you so much for getting in touch and coming on to the show. Really appreciate it. It's good to see you.
Yeah, and you, to be able to talk live instead of just watching you on playback video.
That's the thing, isn't it? Listen, how I always start these chit chats, Andy, as you know, is I always ask people this question now. How did you find the Doctor?
Right, okay. So this is going to give my age away.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't born before the programme started in '63. I was born a little bit afterwards. So I started really early. I started just at the end of Patrick Troughton.
Mm-hmm.
The start of colour transmissions with John Pertwee. So we've probably all had these things where we have snatches of memories in our brains from when we first started watching the show, particularly we were quite young. And I've always had these vague memories of watching particular programs and not remembering what they were. If something scared me at the time, I remember hiding behind the sofa. So it's not it's not a made-up thing. It really did happen. We hid behind the sofa. And my dad was sitting in the sofa, and he always had the ritual of watching the sports on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
He'd stay on for Doctor Who afterwards, and he must have got me watching it. And I remember peeking out from behind the sofa and watching the original broadcast of Spearhead from Space. And there were snatches of things that burnt themselves into my memory. You know, the autons breaking out of the shop window, and the one auton that broke into a tent and killed the occupant, and the Land Rover crashing on the country lane, and all that kind of stuff. It burnt itself into my brain, and I have vague recollections of a couple of episodes of Patrick Troughton. Some snake-like arm coming out of a computer and menacing people, and Patrick looking at a computer monitor and being shocked when a Cyberman's face appeared. And I didn't know where these things were from growing up, you know, because there was no repeats, there was no VHS or DVD, there was no internet. So I had no way of finding out why these fantastic memories lived with me for so long. Not until I was in my adulthood and I had DVDs and I looked back at stuff and I went, that's where that came from. Now I remember it. It was also the music. Do you remember back in the day, Doctor Who doesn't really do it much now, but there was eerie music that went alongside the scary scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Years later, I found out that was Brian Hodgson's efforts for the Crotons. He put some really eerie, alien, pulsating music onto the soundtracks of those episodes, and I used it for 2 or 3 years. And those 2 or 3 years were where I was about 5 or 6 or 7. So they helped implant these memories into my mind. So I stayed with it pretty much all the way up to the mid-80s after that, on and off. So I grew up with Pertwee and then early Tom Baker. And then I felt it lost its way a bit because I always had these fond memories of the Earth-based stories.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and as we got through Tom's era, it became more Hitchhiker-ish, a little bit more competing with Star Wars where it could. And it's still enjoyable, but I missed the fear and the buzz of watching some of those Earthbound stories back in the early 70s. And we got into the 80s, and by that time, the family had acquired a video recorder. I think Dad was always on the front foot when it came to technology like that, and he'd been wanting a video recorder. When it became affordable to buy one, he got one for Christmas 1981.
Wow!
Yeah, and I asked, I begged, can I have some tapes? Because I'd only got one thing on my mind. Yeah, that was it. So I got some tapes, and I made sure there were 3-hour tapes, because I'd looked at the Radio Times and I'd worked out that for a 4-part story, you needed 1 hour and 40 minutes if you're going to get all the credits in and stuff.
I think we all did the same thing, didn't we?
Yeah. So I thought, how am I going to get 2 4-parters on one tape? I don't have to tape over anything.
Yeah.
And I'd be really clever. So once the first cliffhanger came, I got to the point on the tape where I thought that's where the cutter was going to be. And I pressed the record button. At the precise second, we got to the point in the next episode where the cliffhanger came along. And
I see.
8 episodes on one tape. So that's what I was doing for all of Peter Davidson's first season. I did that.
Right.
I did Peter Davidson's second season. And we got to the 5 Doctors, and I recorded that. And then I stopped doing it after that. That was the early 80s, and I'd left school. And I didn't do uni. I did the apprenticeship route. So I was on an engineering apprenticeships, and it wasn't the kind of environment where you talked about Doctor Who.
I'm sure it wasn't. No.
Yeah, I mean, you grew up in the 70s and early 80s, so you'll remember that it wasn't really a cool thing to be a Doctor Who fan once you were at a certain age, and let alone a sci-fi fan or anything like that. So I had my tapes. I had all the Doctor Who weeklies and monthlies up to that point. I had all of the Target books I could get hold of. And I thought, I don't want to be a geek anymore. So I let it all go. It all went down the charity shop. Yeah. Everything down the charity shop.
You did not. What did you have? What did you give them?
I had a lot of
that painful memory.
I thought at the time, this is the thing I should be doing, because I didn't watch Peter Davidson's third season. I was going out drinking at that point. So, I was drifting away from the program and that kind of stuff. So I let all that stuff go. I mean, now I'm in adulthood and I've got disposable income. I brought quite a bit of it back, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But the one thing I let go, which I do regret because it's a hard thing to find, is, did you ever have the Dalek pocketbook from the 1960s? The paperback that had the photo of the Dalek movies on the cover?
I didn't ever have it, and it's one of those few rare things from the 60s I've only seen behind a glass case in an exhibition or something. I never actually held it. Okay,
well, I had that, and it was like 50p from the local bookshop that had a copy. But that went with everything else, so that's not really what I'm going to recover on. But yeah, so I let it all go. But I did get back into it with Colin Baker. And
did you? That's nice to hear.
Well, it was back on Saturdays.
Yeah,
so
true.
I wasn't competing with the family on who's got the remote for Coronation Street or whatever. And then sadly, Colin didn't last all that long to get sort of a screen presence. He had one really good season. Season 22 was one of my favourite seasons.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. I think it's because JNT had got to the point where he said, I don't need a crowded TARDIS anymore. I'm going to go back to having Doctor, female companion, just the two of them. And we're going to do it all the way through the season. And we're going to have a 6-parter in there as well. The equivalent of a 6-parter, so 15 episodes there. And I thought that really worked well. I enjoyed that season on a Saturday. But then, of course, BBC put the boot in on it again, so it got reduced to 14 episodes a season after that. I stuck with it where I could. But then, by the time Sylvester came off, at the time I thought Sylvester was a bit weaker. But now in hindsight, I can look back on it and think, no, he wasn't weak. He was just a bit different. And those stories are now more entertaining to me now than they were when they were broadcast. So I have fondness for the Happiness Patrol and Cretty Show in the Galaxy, and Ghostlight's one of my favourite stories of all time.
Yeah, me too. Me too, yeah.
I love Ghostlight. I thought John Hallam played a superb villain really well.
But do you remember at the time he was famous for other things, wasn't he? So that was a bit of a shock to see him doing this sort of really mysterious
parts.
Yeah.
He played serious and not always likable characters. And he was a film actor. He'd been in a few films. Yeah, you can see him in Flash Gordon, and I think he's
Miss
in
Marple.
Is he Miss Marple? I've not seen him in that.
He's in Miss Marple, the 450 from Paddington with the lovely late Joan Hickson, my favourite Miss Marple. He's in that one. And every time that comes on, I forget he's in it. And he plays a bit of a cad in that. You know, and I go, there's light.
Okay. I'll have to watch that. Michelle will have it somewhere because she's an Agatha Christie fan. So we'll have that somewhere. So I must watch it. Yeah, I know he's in Sherlock Holmes as well. And,
yes, he was.
Of all things,
another one I forget.
Yeah, he did a comedy turn in Blackadder as well. Good actor. So I look back on the later Doctor Who years in the classic run, and I have more fond memories now because I can appreciate what they were trying to do with those last few years. And then where are we? So it got into the 90s, and I'm now living in my own place, and I've spent a year without a TV. After I'd moved in, it was a case of, well, I need furniture before I can get a TV, you know. And eventually I got a TV and I got a video recorder, and I had cable put in, and then wanted me to revisit those old shows on UK Gold. Do you remember they used to do they used to put it episodically through the week, I think.
I'll be honest with you, I was aware of the UK Gold things, Andy, but I never watched them. A, because I didn't have the satellite nonsense to get it. So, you know, but it wasn't worth me getting it because I was never in. In the 90s, I was always working or out.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I remember the advert saying it was coming because it was BSB first, wasn't it? It went to, I think, and then Sky or whatever it became. So I was aware it was being repeated. But it was the VHSs for me that I was more interested in.
Okay, no, I never collected the VHSs.
Didn't you?
I didn't because I hadn't reinvested in the merchandise. I'd reinvested in watching on TV when I could.
Right.
And I started recording the UK Gold Omnibus editions on the Sunday morning.
Oh, of course, yes, I've forgotten about those. Yeah,
that became a ritual. Yeah, every time Sunday morning became very much a ritual. So I'd recorded quite a few of the 60s and 70s ones that way. So I thought, well, I'm not going to spend my hard-earned money buying the official VHSs because I've got the backups, or most of them anyway. So I kept those. And then as we got towards the end of the 90s, DVD came out. And then I thought, okay, this is a more robust medium now. And they're going to put extras on. And that really enticed me to invest in a DVD player. I'm going to start collecting the DVDs. So I think I must have started picking them up around 2003, 2004. I started buying those.
Okay.
And then it became a mission then. So I can look back on what I spent my money on. And apart from the Doctor Who magazines and that, and in the late 70s, early 80s, the DVDs were the next thing where I was going to actually collect a whole range of things. So I really enjoyed doing that, and I watched them all at least once.
Yeah.
But then Michelle came into my life, and her family were Doctor Who fans. She wasn't, but the family were. Yeah. So that was great to have a connection because
it's not with the missus.
Yeah.
Was she like, another one? Oh no.
Well, she has Agatha Christie and some of her favorite TV shows. She appreciates the fan in me to do stuff like this. Yeah. But her dad and mom were fans of the show, and we went through quite a few years where it got back to being a family watching it on Christmas. Wow. We would have Christmas Day, there'd be a dozen or more people around for dinner and that, so you weren't allowed to watch TV. You had to be sociable. But her dad recorded the Christmas specials, and on Boxing Day morning, it was a ritual to get up early in your gym jams, get downstairs by 8:30 because the father-in-law was itching to watch it. and coffees and teas. Everybody got their toast yet? We're all ready yet? And then we'd watch it as a family early doors on Boxing Day and talk about it. And we must have done that for 10 years or more.
Wow.
That was like repeating the experience you had growing up in the early 70s, watching the Saturday shows with the family in the room as well.
Wow.
It kind of went full circle. So, but sadly we don't do that now because they don't do the same Christmas specials anymore. They put a few on New Year's Day, I think became...
the Chibnall era went on New Year's Day, didn't they? Yeah.
So I think after the first Chibnall special, we kind of went away from doing that.
Yeah, that's the same.
And I don't see us doing that again, to be all honesty. Yeah, we watched the specials with Tennant because I think we were all expecting something a bit different. And by the time it got to the first Shooty episode, I wasn't watching it. The in-laws watched it and they said it was the worst thing they'd ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought, okay, that's telling. I'm not going to tune in for the Shooty series, and I didn't. So so I think we stopped really investing it after Stephen Moffat left the show, and it became Chimble, and it's just not been the same since. So we haven't gone back to that.
See, that's sad in a sense, isn't it? Because you had all those years of watching Doctor Who as a family together at Christmas time. I mean, what was I'm trying to imagine when you're all watching that and you've got your coffee and your tea and your toast and everything like this, and you're watching these things on Boxing Day morning. I'm trying to imagine what that could be like. What was the discussion about those episodes? Because you had quite a lot. You had from the Christmas Invasion right up to Capaldi's last one. You had all those going there. What was the conversation like? What was the typical?
I think the chief thing was, did we all enjoy it? You did. Was it a good story? Did we enjoy it? Was it fun? I'm the one with the anorak knowledge, so I'd be the one pointing at, oh, this is going to be the great intelligence. I can see this coming. They wouldn't have known that because they love the show, but not to the extent where they know the back history. So I remember watching that particular Christmas one where we didn't know what was going to happen. There weren't any spoilers. And I remember there was a scene at the front end with the gates to the house. And I think GI was the initials on the gates. And instantly thought, that's going to be the great intelligence. And then they did that thing with the Yeti snowman eating the workers. And we loved watching that. And I would occasionally point something out that I could remember from an old episode as, oh, that's this or that's that. So we would talk about the show for a bit and talk about it with some of the wife's cousins who also watched it. And we didn't debate it endlessly. It was just a nice thing to do for a couple of hours. A holiday morning at home in your pajamas, drinking cups of coffee like it used to be.
I think it sounds lovely. I think it's very magical as well. It's a shame that it's not continuing, but I can fully understand why. Absolutely.
We could talk endlessly about that, couldn't we? But yeah, I mean, getting back to the videoing of it.
Yeah,
we invested in a Betamax set. So yeah, well, I think on a technical level, it was probably the better technology, but
yes, well, I think that's actually admit that now, don't they? Betamax was the better format. It's just Hollywood didn't like it, apparently.
It was Sony with the problem.
Was it?
Sony owned Betamax and Philips owned VHS, so we all call it VHS these days. Like everybody calls a vacuum cleaner Hoover.
Yes.
Well, Sony, they in the early 80s, Sony still considered video machines as high end. So they would not allow them to be sold or in rental shops. So most people that had a video recorder that I was aware of in the early 80s were doing it on rental through radio rentals because they rented their TV.
That's true, yeah.
So when the TV came round for a new agreement to be made, they were offered a TV and video combination for a bit more money. So a lot of people ended up with VHS machines by default So Sony weren't allowing Betamax machines to go through the rental industry, so you had to buy one outright, which was expensive for a good many people.
Well,
so
very much so, yeah.
A lot of homes ended up with a VHS machine. So if they ever invested in buying a machine, they buy the one that they were already used to. They'd buy the one maybe they'd got some tapes already, and they weren't going to buy a machine that wouldn't play the tapes they'd already got. So VHS won the war because of the rental industry and Sony not wanting to be part of it.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing how these things come around again and again and again, because we've had it with TVs, and it's bizarre. What was your favorite cassette? Were you a Scotch boy, or were you a BASF boy, or can you remember what make you got Maxell?
I used to buy Sony's own brand because I was working at that point. I'd left school in '82, so I was earning money so I could buy my own tapes. So there were yellow and red the card covers on the Sony tapes, E180s they were. So I used to buy the high-end ones thinking I'm going to keep these Doctor Who tapes forever.
Yeah.
So I want the best tape for them to go on. For a few years, that was my logic until I realized that, I couldn't play them anymore. So I'd love to say I've still got them to show them to you, but they all went in the bin a long time ago.
Did they? Yeah.
Do you remember back in the 80s when video was big? You used to be able to walk into Woolworths and buy those false covers that made your blank video look like it was a classic book title on a shelf.
Oh yeah, definitely. And they were fairly cheap, weren't they, as well? I remember.
They were cheap, yeah. Well, I had in my naivety thought, this is great. I'm going to buy these card covers, take my tapes out of the Sony cover and put them in here. And there were 5 colours, if I remember. There was like a dark blue, a green, a dark brown, a red, and a beige one. I
don't remember the green one. I remember the others, but I don't remember the green one.
Because I thought, I'm going to put my Peter Davidsons in the cream coloured covers. I want to put my William Hartnells in red. I'm going to put my Patrick Troughton in blue. I'm going to put my John Pertwee in green. But of course, they rarely repeated those. So I only got as far as Curse of Peladon and the Genesis Omnibus, because BBC ran the Doctor Who on the Monster season in 1982.
82, yeah.
Yeah, because they'd had success with the 5 Faces of Doctor Who in 81.
Huge success, yeah.
That's right. But unfortunately, our video arrived at Christmas, so I missed taping those.
Yeah.
I had some older stories on tape from that Monster season, but I couldn't really put the Betamax tapes in the card covers because the card covers were only made to fit VHS.
That's right.
And Betamax was smaller, so I had to do a Blue Peter and cut a piece of card out in like a U channel, slide it in the top of the card case, and then I could put my tape in. It would fit snugly.
This was a lot of commitment, Andy. It really was.
Well, for what I thought was going to be something I would have forever. Yeah. So it was fun. It was fun at the time, and I enjoyed doing it. But then, that all disappeared when I started moving away from the program and saying, I don't want to be the geek anymore, holding on to all this stuff.
Yeah.
But now, as we know, geeks have inherited the earth.
Well, they did do for a little while, yeah.
Yeah. So it's now cool to be a fan. It's cool to be into sci-fi in general. And I've now got shelves full of stuff upstairs that I wouldn't have contemplated having back in the 80s. Yeah. What I wouldn't have contemplated and DVD even being around.
Well, it's a point, isn't it? Because none of us foresaw, because it's very difficult for fans that have come to the show with the reboot, basically, who have been spoiled when it comes to merchandise. Yeah. They've had action figures, which we always wanted, and never really got apart from the Dennis Fisher stuff. They've had reams of books. They've had the DVDs. They're now on Blu-rays. They've had audios. We got practically nothing. We got Target books. We got the annuals every year. We would get the weekly, which then went to the monthly. You would possibly get the odd T-shirt coming out. You would get Letraset transfers, the odd special magazine coming out.
I remember the transfers.
Do you not remember the Letraset transfer? I loved them. I loved
not
them.
the Doctor Who ones.
No, yeah.
I don't remember those. No. But yeah, there was very little reference material. back in the 70s, we had very little. I remember Dad brought home the 10th anniversary Radio Times.
Yeah.
And I pored over that. And to this day, that is a high point in magazine publishing.
Have you still got it?
No. It was, I think it was quite early when I was growing up. So I wasn't buying stuff myself to keep for me. People were buying me things at a birthday or Christmas, or just because they'd seen it on the shelf. And I remember looking at it and probably not reading it cover to cover, but just looking at all the illustrations and the paintings and stuff. And those images burnt themselves into my brain. They were wonderful photography. And the artwork for the Terry Nation store was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I did find online in 2003, they reprinted that magazine.
That's right, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, they made a really good job of doing it. And I think the guy that did the original was brought on board to redo it how he had initially intended. I think I read somewhere that the copper toning on a lot of the photos was darker than it was supposed to be on the original.
Okay.
So when they reprinted it, they lightened the copper toning up so you could see more detail.
Right.
So that's the version I've got upstairs. At every occasion, I'll take it out and look at it. And I think if you back then in 70, you had that if you were lucky. You had the making of Doctor Who.
Yes.
Doctor Who Monster Book.
Essential.
And that was essential reference material. And all of our knowledge was based on what was written in those publications.
That's right, yeah.
And that became folklore and canon, for as far as we were concerned, right through the 80s. And which is why I'm a bit disappointed that Trimble and RTD have decided to sort of chuck some of that canon away.
Some?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And reinvent it in the image that they perceive it to be, which I think is an insult to the fans and an insult to the original people that made those programs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'd agree with. I mean, I'd agree with you on that one. It's shallow for me to be able to say, right, we're going to take this show that was successful for all these years and we're going to recreate it in our image now and make it totally unsuccessful. I mean, it's been a major flop. And they can't admit that. They won't admit that, and they carry on. It's just heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is, and I don't think there's going to be a series 3. I might be wrong. They might do some specials, but I don't think there'll be a series 3. And they won't cry over it. I know in the late 80s we cried a bit because we wanted it to carry on. It wasn't given that opportunity. And I think it would have got better, in my opinion. I think they'd found the right formula and would have got better, but I'm not going to cry if it stops now.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting in a few years to see what Shooty says publicly. Because, when Christopher Eccleston did it and he disappeared after one season and we didn't really understand why. And then we found out there'd been some backroom disagreements. But he kept quiet about it for quite a long time. He was very professional. And then he did that panel interview a year or two ago and he decided to tell people how it was for him at the time. I don't know if you've seen that particular one. He was saying, well, this is how it actually was, and this is why I left. And I wonder if in years to come, Shooty has his own story to tell, which we can't even guess at the moment because he's got NDAs in place and he's got to stay loyal to the brand because he's still in it.
Who would care, though? Would you care, Andy? I wouldn't care what he has to say.
Find out. Yeah, I wouldn't really care all that much. I'm not waiting for it. But I would be interested to find out if he was on the same page as RTD.
Well, it wasn't originally, of course, because we know that it's been documented now, hasn't it? Gatwa had a certain look that he wanted for his Doctor, and it was deemed too traditional. And then he wanted to play it a certain way, allegedly. And it was the RTD that came back with let's make him more emotional. Let's make him a bit more human type thing. All alleged, but that's what we've read in various sources now. So sure, I think he might have been approaching it originally from a different point of view, but he's gone, from as far as I'm concerned, Andy, he's gone 100% with right, okay, let's go down this route then.
Well, yeah. I mean, RTD is obviously, he's a bit of a control freak now, I think. He's got his own image about exactly how the show should be, exactly how the characters should be portrayed. And he's not leaving room for interpretation.
No.
If you think from the so-called storytelling to the performances, have all got to be a particular way. So his vision is manifested in its entirety on screen. And it's just a shame. But yeah, I'd just be vaguely interested if anybody says anything once all their contracts are done and dusted. If anybody's going to step out of line and say something.
Well, I'm sure there's many stories to be told. I mean, Eccleston's very brave because he's in that position where he can sort of start saying things about it, and there'll be others though that we don't know of that won't dare. They wouldn't dare speak out. It's such a shame, isn't it? Really,
risk to their careers if they did.
Yeah, and it's awful that there are certain people around that could possibly want to do that and can do that and get away with it. It really is. It's awful, this whole thing about being able to end people's livelihoods and people living in fear like that. It must be terribly stressful.
Well, that's the entertainment industry, though, isn't it? All over.
No.
It doesn't operate like commercial industry in other spheres of life. You wouldn't get anything like that in manufacturing, for example, or any other type of industry. I don't think. It's just its own thing, its own bubble.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it has spilled into other industries because we've had people cancelled and sacked from their jobs for political beliefs or religious
yeah, I guess if it's public facing, then yeah, probably you're right there.
Yeah, because we've heard about all that. I mean, it seems to be, hopefully, touch wood, it seems to be curtailing a little bit and backing off a bit, but they still try. There's still people, alleged activists out there that are trying to do that and go, blah 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 blah. Can you imagine if they turned on RTD? Can you imagine if he'd said anything at all?
But he's not going to, is he? Because he's right up there with them.
Oh, totally. Sometimes I wonder, though, Andy, if this is why he did that, because he saw what might have happened to Mr. Gareth Roberts or anybody else, and I don't want to go down that route. I'll say this and this and this, and then he got so involved in it.
I think he's been heavily influenced by things that have happened since he's been away from the show. I think he's been heavily influenced by the people he's been with and where he's been living, etc. Yeah, you did a great interview with Gareth Roberts on this channel. I watched that. That was very insightful.
Yeah, he's a great guy to talk to as well, Andy. And the fact that because he was cancelled effectively from sort of stuff, and he's managed to find other routes of work now, thankfully, and what have you. That was just shocking, but it was great to have him on the show. So I'm glad you enjoyed that one.
Yeah. And I've I've seen a few of the shows. The Blake 7 one he did was really good.
Oh yeah, are you a Blake 7 fan as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it inspired me a little bit. I stumbled across your channel just doing a general search for Doctor Who news. Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the YouTube channels are generally just one person saying what their view of something is. And I came across yours, and the thumbnail looked really interesting. I clicked on it, and it was one of the news, Sunday night news ones. And you got people on there with you. You were interacting with the audience, making comments, and making it a collective thing, a community. And I thought, great, I want to keep watching this now. And that's why I pinged you and said, let's have a chat.
Yeah.
But yeah,
we get to meet people like you. It's great stuff, because, suddenly, you suddenly think, oh, we're not alone here. Because we all went through that period, didn't we, through the Chibnall era, where you couldn't, I mean, it's still like that to an extent as we're recording this, but it was you really couldn't say boo to a goose. You couldn't say anything that was deemed out of line in that era because you were an opt or an ist or a whatever. And that was it just got absolutely ridiculous. But actually, with things like what we're doing now and chatting about it, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to chat to you had it not been for, the fact that we've all found each other in a way, and we continue to find each other.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So long may it continue. But I watched all the Blake 7s. I got the DVDs, and it's a great show. And I've been waiting to see if it came out on Blu-ray. And when that trailer dropped, my chin hit the floor. Fantastic! Not only is it coming out on Blu-ray, they're going to give it the proper treatment. And clearly, the people behind the Doctor Who collection sets are going to be working on this and have done. So we're going to get, we're going to get the works with this. And I went into Blake 7 mode for at least a week, and went through eBay looking at T-shirts and polo shirts with Blake 7 logos on it. So I've got myself a polo shirt with Blake 7 on it now. So I'm going to be wearing that at some point.
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you seen the Blake 7 production diary book?
Yes, I've got it. I've got it over there. Yeah, I love all that stuff. Yeah,
fantastic piece of work. That.
Yeah,
I think the author's been involved in some of the stuff going on with the Blu-ray.
Oh, right. I hadn't heard that. Right. That's great.
From somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. So we got season 25 coming out in October.
Yeah.
And hot on the heels of that is the Blake 7 season 1. Now, I suspect, I'm hoping they've given the green light to season 2. Because of
I would think so, Andy. I mean, one of the things they do is they like to say, right, if this is successful, we'll go for the next one. Of course, it's successful. I mean, as I said, you know, it's sold, it's still selling, it's hugely successful. They'll go for 2, and they'll go for 3, and they'll go for 4. You know, they know what we're like. We want a complete set.
Yeah, absolutely. Although also OCD goes mad.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so they'll do it. It's like when season 12 got released and the collection set, the first one. Yeah, there was a shorter print one because the BBC didn't really know whether it was going to sell. They'd done all the VHSs, then they did all the DVDs, and there was always going to be a little bit of negative pushback saying, "Oh, we spent all our money on the VHS, and now you're asking us to spend all the money on the DVDs." And I think there must have been, well, let's see if the appetite's there for Blu-ray before we commit to larger print runs. And then, of course, they had to reprint season 12 because it just sold out instantly.
Yeah.
I mean,
I had to get it on the second run. Yay?
I had to get it on the second release.
You got the second run. Did you get the right color, the right covered discs inside it, or were you one of the ones that got a Pertwee covered discs?
Oh no, I heard about that. I got the right discs, thankfully.
Right there, yeah.
Here's a quick question for you.
Oh,
you've got season 10 Blu-ray collection, I assume.
Yep.
Yeah. Have you played the Daleks with the new CGI?
No, I haven't yet. No, I haven't.
I'm not sure it works.
Is this the one that was on the Day of the Daleks DVD?
No, I don't think so.
Right, so it's another edition. I watched the DVD version of Day of the Daleks with all these new things and the new what have you.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And it was all right. I liked the change in the Dalek voice. It was okay, but I can live with the original quite happily. You know, I really can. So when it came to the season 10, because I get the standard releases, as you know.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay.
Yeah, when it came to season 10 on standard, I've watched the original cleaned up episodes on, but I haven't quite got to the alternatives yet.
Oh, okay, no, fair enough. It's always nice to have something else to look forward to. I don't really listen to the commentaries on the DVDs much. So if ever I feel like it, I can go back through them all again and just have the commentaries on.
Absolutely. I tend to go to behind the sofa first, personally, because I just love seeing what other actors associated with the show like to see of their workmates, if you like, their colleagues, their friends, and their time in the show. Peter Davison always makes me laugh, Andy, because they'll watch these things.
I haven't watched them, and I should watch them all, but I don't, because I think Janet Fielding winds me up too much. I just can't get around that, and partly me, I should just ignore it, but I find it difficult to ignore. I think when they started it, it was a great idea, because when people like Wendy Padbury are coming in, looking at stuff they've never seen before, probably, and then comparing it to their experiences on the show and saying, "Oh wow, you did that," and that's good. But when you got the same people doing it for sort of the 6th or 7th time, they know what to expect now. And I think is your reflection on the latest series going to be tainted by the fact that you're doing it for the umpteenth time? You're no longer surprised, and maybe that's going to show in the commentary that you give out about it. Are you starting to get bored by this?
Right.
So I'm not sure whether the idea can continue and be as good as it was when it started.
I don't know. I mean, I listened to the commentaries when they were first out on the DVDs, and I'm very grateful for them, because we've lost an awful lot of people that were on those commentaries now.
Yeah, we have.
You know, so at least we'll have some
stuff.
Yeah, I keep thinking of when they get round to releasing the Key to Time season, at least we'll have contribution from Mary Tam.
Yes.
Because she took part
I've
in
noticed
DVDs.
with the collections that there aren't that many new commentaries, and that's probably the reason.
A lot of people have sadly, we've lost them now, haven't we? I mean,
yeah,
that's what happens, you know.
But it took what 17, 18 years for the DVD range to come out. It will take 10 for the Blu-rays to come out.
Well, but then they've got the standards coming up behind them. I mean, this year we've had how many standards this year? How many did we count? One, maybe. Maybe we've had one this year. I was expecting another one, but no, it hasn't appeared. I think the Blake 7 one took the time slot.
You've been shortchanged a bit there.
They're making us wait. As I say, I was expecting something appearing in October, and I thought, oh, this will be a standard, and it turns out to be the standard edition, but for Blake 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, they've taken up a Doctor Who slot there, rather than bringing
Can you call it a standard edition?
Well, that's what I'm calling it. No, it's just a regular edition, isn't it? Really, you know.
But if you look at the photograph of the artwork and the discs, it looks like there's a pretty thick booklet with that set.
It's exactly the same as the standard editions for Doctor Who.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because the standard editions get a booklet in it.
But okay, my understanding is the standard edition booklets are thin and they're just listing the content.
I'll show you. Hang on. I will handily grab one here for you and show you this. So this is number 26.
Yeah,
because they're all the same. Lovely presented in that. Can you see that, Andy? Look at that.
Yeah,
really good.
Yeah.
And then this is why I knew these things were coming when they started the collector's editions. That's why I didn't go for these, because I thought these are bound to be cheaper and they're thinner, so they look good on a shelf. I've actually worked it out, Andy. On these size shelves I've got here, I can get all 26 seasons on one shelf. Okay. So anyway, we've got this. Now, so the booklets, yeah, they are slightly trimmed. Can you see that? They are trimmed from what you'll be used to in the collector's edition. Yeah. But the Blake 7 ones apparently take the same sort of format and the same sort of size as these. Where it's the basic points you need to know, really.
Oh, okay. With the special editions, you get an appraisal of the story.
Yes. Yeah.
And you get maybe 2 pages of insight into the making of the story and how it's reflected in years gone by, and then you get the disc contents.
Yeah.
So I'm stuck with that now. So I've got to finish the special ones.
Do you know, a lot of people are saying that to me. I've got some friends that have started with this, and I was saying to them as they come, I said, well, listen, you're going to get another choice, and they weren't convinced I was telling the truth. I said, you will get another choice. They will come out on collectors. They'll be slightly cheaper. So they went and did this, and now they're all saying to me, oh, well, we've started now, so we'll finish. But I do have a couple of friends that buy them on the collector's edition and then swap it they sell it on eBay or wherever, and swap it and buy the standard edition when it comes out. But as I say, the standard editions this year have been here in 2024. They've been terrible. It's just, where are they? Come on.
What's the last one you had then?
22.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We're that far behind. Behind. Yeah. So,
well, hopefully in the new year you'll get a couple back to back, maybe.
Well, they started with 4 in 1 year, and then some bright spark must have realised, oh, hang on a minute, we're going to get these released pretty quickly because there's only 26 of them. Or not, as the case may be. They might not bring out the 60s ones, might they? You never know.
I think they're waiting for the special editions to pretty much sell out, so they're not left with product.
You see, I mean, that's the case, but you know, the standard editions are best sellers as well. So I don't understand the logic. Get the money twice over from you've got another market from people like myself, fans like myself, who are waiting for that version, and we're waiting a long time. So, you know, hello, everybody, if you're tuning in, get them released in 2025.
I'm down the standard edition route, but when the blurb was printed saying this season 12 is coming out, it said limited edition Blu-ray set. Do you remember the wording?
Mm-hmm.
It didn't imply there was going to be anything other than this set.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I've got to get these then, because once they've gone, that will be it.
It's called marketing.
Yeah. Never mind.
From a business point of view as well, you just know you've got to think, right, if they're going to cash in on Doctor Who fans and science fiction fans as much as they possibly can. I mean, they even do the tins now. Sorry, steel books. They even do the steel books now to get an extra few grotzits, don't they? You know, so somebody that's thinking,
I have a policy, so I don't buy everything. I'm selective, so I have to have a policy. So I buy the classic Steel books if they contain at least one episode of the original broadcast, because I'm not a huge fan of the animations. It's nice they're doing them, and I appreciate they're being done, but I actually think of the telesnaps as being a better way to watch it. I've seen a few telesnaps, and afterwards you forget you weren't watching an actual, moving broadcast.
That's true.
Your brain compensates for it. It's like watching a TV with subtitles. If you're into it, and your brain will compensate, and afterwards you think, I'm sure they were talking English, even though you've been reading subtitles. So I enjoyed the telesnaps, and I enjoyed when the Steelbot's got one or more original episodes on it. But I could leave the animations alone, if I'm honest.
I'm the same. Weren't those telesnaps though? Do you remember when they started appearing in the 90s? Just how we were all fascinated with this, and just, oh my god, it's just like complete. It blew our minds, didn't it?
Yeah. I read an article about how those were discovered.
Yes.
The guy was used to visit the BBC written archives, and he wasn't allowed in. He had to have someone help him. A researcher had to go, and he didn't know what the hell was in there. So he said, "Is there not a catalogue or something?" "Oh yeah, we got one of those." "Why didn't you come forward and say, here's a list of what we've got?" But and then they discovered the telesnaps on that particular day, I think.
And then the rest was, right, let's get them out to people as soon as possible. It was just a joy, wasn't it, when you were especially when you came into the magazine, because we didn't know what was good. Remember the days when you would buy Doctor Who magazine and you didn't know what was going to be in it that Thursday night when you got it on the Thursday night?
I remember with the weeklies and the early monthlies, it was like when you bought a Target book. You go into the shop, usually, and they would be, because we didn't have spoilers, we didn't have pre-announcements or anything like we get now, and there it was, and you brought it there and then. So I remember that feeling of going to the local newsagents to get the magazine. That was a good feeling then.
I used to love that as well. Thursday nights. I can still remember it around, but we're recording this in October 2024, everybody, and the nights are starting to get that sort of hazy. I remember having to go home from school at certain ages, pick up my pocket money, then go down the road and cross over the road to the newsagents across the road just to get my Doctor Who magazine, whether it be weekly or the monthly, my look-in, anything else that I could afford at the time, then go home and devour them for the Thursday night, It was a pleasure,
I remember
wasn't it?
I did a paper round for years, and part of my
pay,
I got some of my pay plus the Doctor Who weekly.
Good deal.
Yeah,
good deal.
Part of that, yeah. So I think we had looking for a while as well. I remember that.
Well, you had to. It was essential 70s reading for a while, looking, wasn't it? Everybody had it, as far as I'm concerned.
It didn't have Doctor Who, but it did have Tomorrow People was in it, I think, in Space 1999.
That's right, and Wurzel eventually with John.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm on at that point. Yeah.
And I remember when Davison started in 1982, they had the back page given to Davison in his Doctor Who gear with the TARDIS, because it might not have been an ITV show, but it was big news. And they gave away the Easter eggs with Davison on and the the little police box Easter eggs.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a competition to run them.
Right. Okay. No, I missed out on that. Yeah.
Oh, I remember it well.
I missed out on the Countdown comics from the very early 70s. I wasn't quite old enough to appreciate those or know that they were there. But I think UFO had all the strips reprinted in a really lovely hardback book, which I've got from Countdown comic. And I wish they'd do the same for the Doctor Who strips. Imagine if they're doing like a coffee table sized book with all the original Countdown strips in it.
I seem to remember thinking that that was on the way, or somebody was working on that sort of stuff. I know them.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm sure that was in the head somewhere. It could be right. I might be totally out there, but I do remember reading something about this, thinking that's going to be a massive seller.
Well, the UFO and the Space 99 strips, they've all now been reprinted, and you can buy them from the Fanderson website.
Wow, fabulous.
So I got the first UFO one because the cover of it was just, I had to have it. The cover was like the first cover of the first Countdown comic. And that was a nice thing to have. And maybe John Pertwee strips will be published in one single volume. That would be fantastic.
Well, because Marvel did it as well, or was it Panini at that point? They did. Remember the Classic Comics? Maybe I'm getting it confused with that, because they did produce a range called Classic Comics, which are fabulous. Because there's an awful lot of those things.
Yeah,
and for a TV comic as well. You know.
That lasted a couple of years, and then they stopped doing it.
And then they stopped doing it. Maybe it was something along those lines. I don't know. But if they've got the rights to it and stuff, I mean, they're bringing out these lovely big graphic novels now, aren't they? Of all these collected comic strips from their day.
Yeah, I bought the backup strip one.
Have you?
The first one, the Dalek one, and I think next month the second volume gets printed with the Cyberman on the front. I love those backup strips.
Oh, they were fantastic. Croton and everything. Oh,
yeah, they were fantastic.
Can you imagine if the show was doing those sort of stories now?
Yeah. And what they did Star Beast, and of course they had to shoehorn the politics into it, so that messed that up.
That was such a letdown, wasn't it? I was so excited about seeing something like that on screen.
But the trailer was fantastic.
The which?
The trailer came out for Star Beast, Star Beast. When the trailer came out, I was really excited because the trailer had a lot of energy in it. Yeah. And you were seeing, a dramatized version of a comic strip you knew quite well. I thought, this is going to be great, because it was far better than the Gimbal efforts based on the trailer. And of course, when the actual show started, it was the comic strip dramatized with all the politics bolted onto it. So that lost its appeal to me.
Yeah. No, I understand that. It is such a shame, because when you look at those backup strips and some of they're proper science fiction, they're proper Doctor Who, because in those days these writers just wrote and they treated us properly. They gave us good, intelligent stories. I mean, I remember being so involved with the story of an emotional Cyberman called Croton. I mean, that was mind blowing at the time. And then you had Absalom Dak. The Free Fall Warriors, all these other,
imagine what they do now. Emotional Cyberman with Croton, it hit the right note, didn't it? It hit the right level. You gave him emotions, but you didn't overplay it. Yeah. He was still trying to be cybernetic being and questioning things. But now, if they did an emotional Cyberman, it would all be smart aleck jokes, one-liners, and I'm sure they'd try and make it cry.
Oh, they would, because that's what emotion means now, isn't it? Emotion means to cry now. I mean, we've seen that with Gatwa, haven't we? Oh, he's more human, he's more emotional. He blubs every 2 seconds. It's just ridiculous. It's really watered down the character of the Doctor for me.
Well, it has. Yeah, the mystery should have been maintained. That's how you can keep a show going like that. Keep the mystery there. Never explain.
Well, it is called Doctor Who.
Yeah.
They seem to forget that.
Yeah.
Doctor Who. There is a question in that title, actually. You just don't show the question mark.
Yeah.
Don't mention question marks.
What was the episode where Missy was in the episode, and it was Peter Capaldi.
Right.
The line had been written in to suggest that he was actually called Doctor Who originally.
Really? I don't remember.
Yeah. Me at this point, to say, of course he's called Doctor Who. He dropped the Who when he realised it was too on the nose. And I thought,
that's too much of a fan reference, isn't it, from Moffat? That's him trying to be clever there and giving a sly wink to the fan. Don't do that. I mean, I started to lose it with this modern version, even though I was enjoying Matt Smith's performance and then Capaldi's performance. I was just not taken in by the scripts and this self-referential stuff and look at us, aren't we clever? And they started to believe, Andy, for me, they were starting to believe too much their own myth, because too many reviews were saying, isn't Doctor Who clever? And it does this and it does that. But that's science fiction. It's about time travel. You can do that. You just have to have your basic plan to understand how to do it. It became too much like the Time Traveler's Wife for me as well, which was just ridiculous.
Okay.
No, I do. Honestly, I think, Andy, he read the book and he thought, I've got rid of a song. you know, and put that whole thing. And I thought, oh, this is nonsense. So I don't really remember much about those episodes at all. When we do the reviews, it's a joy to watch them again, because I just think, oh, right, okay, don't remember this.
No, I stuck with it till Capaldi's second season.
Yeah.
I didn't see his third season. I have to say, I did watch Whittaker's first season, because I was just, what's this going to be like? And the one good thing Whittaker's first season was that all the complicated story arcs disappeared.
Did they?
It disappeared, and very quickly it was one adventure per week. And I
think because Chibnall couldn't write those sort of things. Sorry, Andy. I'm saying, do you think that was because Chibnall couldn't write those sort of arcs?
Probably, yeah, probably. So even though it was, it wasn't by design, I appreciate the fact that it become more episodic. But then, of course, every story had to have a social narrative behind it. And after that, I
still can't believe that. I mean, I've heard it now so many times. I was hearing it at the time. I still can't believe, and I've never seen that era. I still can't believe when people like yourself say to me, every story had some sort of message. I mean, it wasn't a Hanna-Barbera cartoon, or it wasn't a Masters of the Universe cartoon where at the end the lead character, like He-Man, turns around and says, "Oh, the message of this story today was."
Okay, I never watched that. I never saw it. Is that what happened?
I used to love that. Monday, Masters of the Universe Mondays and CITV. Oh yes, I still love that. But that's what happened at the end of the episode. The He-Man character would come on and basically tell you what the message of that story was. In that particular one, they would find this thing. So this is what, when people say to me about the Chibnall era, this is what that reminds me of. These whole things where they were teaching young children about good and bad, or rude and not rude, or something like that.
I suspect he felt he didn't have any choice. Clearly, he's not a good writer when it comes to certain topics like science fiction and stuff like that. I've heard that I didn't watch Broadchurch, but I've heard it's good.
The first one was, but okay. Sorry to interrupt you. The first one was good because the simple reason was it was a mystery. It was a murder mystery, and you didn't actually know until the last minute. The way they filmed it and the way that it was directed was superb, because the way they revealed who the baddie was in the film, because we've got to be careful what we say, the baddie was in the film, was very well done, and it built up the tension. But the second and third one are instantly forgettable.
Okay. I didn't invest in it, so I've just heard people say some positive things about it. So clearly he has something he can bring to a script if it's not, science fiction. But I suspect he felt, after all the talk about we've got to have a woman doctor, we've got to have this, we've got to have that, I suspect he felt pressure to deliver a narrative. It's difficult to see who he would have cast. If he'd have cast a white male, he was
never going to do that. That was never on the card. It was him that wanted a woman.
Yeah.
So it was never on the cards for him.
Okay.
I reckon. I still reckon today, personal opinion, I reckon he went to that meeting with the BBC, and said, right, the only way I'll do this if we change the Doctor into a woman. I still think he was going to expecting them to turn around and say, well, that can't happen, so therefore he wouldn't get the job. That's my personal opinion.
Okay.
So no, it's just what I think, because yeah. And anyway, it was just a case of they said, okay, let's go with that, and then he was like, oh, okay, I've got to do it now. It's just the way I get it. Reading between the lines, he didn't really want it. He laid down certain conditions, and they agreed to it, and then he went, oh well, I'm going to have to do it.
Okay, I didn't know. I didn't have that level of insight into that. That's interesting.
It's just how I interpret it. That's all.
You get to a point where you can see something's coming, and it's almost inevitable. So I think whoever took charge of that show was going to have to do something like that, because BBC were looking for it. If you believe the social narrative, everybody wanted it. Obviously, they don't, but
they didn't. No,
they would prefer to think that people did want it, and then as soon as it happens, the interest drops, and then those people that were putting pressure on for it to happen shift their searchlight somewhere else, because they're not fans. They're not following the show like we would, so they just move on to the next target, so to speak.
Well, that's exactly it. And I mean, first episode done and dusted, and then it went down and down and down every week, and it continues to do so now with the new era as well. It's just shedding viewers every episode. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's heartbreaking in a sense, because we want our show to be big and bold and successful, but there's so many things wrong with it right now in my eyes.
There's not much drama on TV these days that isn't a police murder detective thing.
Oh, tell me. Yeah, tell me about it.
You know,
that's quite boring, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, some of them are really good, and some of them aren't so good. But how many drama shows do you get now that aren't a murder detective type of show?
Yeah.
I can't immediately think of any.
No.
Unless you're talking about Netflix and Prime and whatnot. On terrestrial TV, it's like drama's died, and I think a lot of that is you haven't got the political will to do it. You haven't got the script writers. You haven't got the talent there.
Yeah.
You've got good actors. There's lots of good actors given the material, but you haven't got the writing skills. All those people we grew up with in the 70s and the 80s that used to write, not just for Doctor Who, but good drama elsewhere on TV, you know, be it World War II drama or sort of spy thriller or whatever it was. Those people aren't around anymore. No one's replaced them. Jed Murico? Pronounced his name correctly? The guy that did Line of Duty.
Right.
He's very good. He's very good. His Line of Duty scripts were superb. If you ignore the very last episode where, personally, I think he made the wrong decision about how to play the end of the series, but that's...
I've never seen it, Andy.
Oh, it's good. It's good. There were 6 series, and we were all invested. 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right up to the last episode. Unfortunately, he had 2 choices how to end the episode, and he went for the wrong choice, in my personal opinion.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, and a lot of people weren't happy with that. It's like the investment in the show had been let down by the final episode. That was a creative choice on his part. It wasn't because he couldn't write good scripts. He made a creative decision that didn't quite pay off for the series.
That's a shame.
That aside, the quality of his scripts and the pace of the show was riveting.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's many people around like that. And interestingly enough, he didn't get on with some of the BBC execs.
Didn't he?
No, I remember reading an interview where he said half of them don't do anything. They're a waste of space. Oh, I don't know who he was talking about, but I thought with the current Doctor Who setup, with half a dozen producers on the credits, what are they actually doing? I imagine a lot of people he had to deal with a little bit like that. And he'd wrote a sci-fi drama in the late 90s called Invasion Earth. And it was one of those shows that came along, after the Doctor Who movie was broadcast, there was a kind of little bit of an uplift with the BBC about science fiction. And they actually had a science fiction page in the Radio Times, and McGann got a little comic strip out of it. And a bit of an uplift. And the X-Files had been around for 2 or 3 years, and that was really popular. And somebody commissioned this sci-fi show that Jed Moriarty had written called Invasion Earth. And I think it went out on a Sunday night from memory. Might be wrong.
Did it?
Yeah, it went out in the evening as a prime time adult drama.
Right.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. It was very interesting. I enjoyed watching it. But then halfway through, one of the BBC execs said, "Don't like this. Science fiction's for kids."
Oh, dear.
And the rest of the episodes were flipped from an evening broadcast slot to Saturday morning.
What? Really?
Yeah, it flipped to Saturday morning. So anybody that was watching it would have tuned in the following week and it wasn't there anymore. And I thought, who the hell has made that decision? And it reminded me of Jonathan Powell's attitude to Doctor Who.
Yeah.
This is for kids. This is for kids. Yeah. It's not for family. It's not for adults. It's for kids. I thought someone of that ilk has made that decision and basically killed it.
So that's all passed me by. I've not heard this because I was working stuff in the 90s. But it's amazing that, still even in the 90s, they had this attitude over the BBC tour. Had Doctor Who gone to the 1996 Doctor Who gone to a series with BBC Worldwide, as it was then, partnering with whoever it would have been in America, and the shows were going to be put here, they would have hated it. They would have hated it because it would have had to have an evening slot, possibly on Saturday nights, because there was just so much money invested in it, and BBC Worldwide would have insisted on it to make it a commercial success. So they would have hated it. Yeah, it wouldn't have stood a chance.
No, if it was going to come back, it had to be Saturdays. You can't come back with a half-assed effort.
Well, it would have had to be on a Saturday because they would have insisted on the 45-minute format, wouldn't they, from the American side of stuff? But hadn't heard about your story there of Invasion Earth. People in the BBC at the time would have gone, "Oh no, we've got this back. Oh, and we're going to have to put it on." Ugh.
Yeah. So I think there was a bit of an uplift, but it didn't convince enough people.
That's a shame, isn't it? That's a shame. So, what do you think? Where we're at now, October 2024. Having chatted about it, where do you think Doctor Who's future lies?
As a current show, nowhere. It's only going to make money with the merchandise that reflects the classic era of the show. First of all, there isn't any merchandise worth speaking of for the current era of the show, and if there was, who's going to buy it?
A minority.
Yeah, it's a minority thing now. It's become a minority show, and really, it doesn't belong on Saturday nights anymore.
No,
based on the audience. If the BBC execs were true to how they treated it originally, they'd have moved it by now. So I don't think it has a future as a live show. The merchandise for the classic era will carry on because people buy it. When the Blu-rays finish, there isn't going to be another hard media iteration of the stories coming out. I can't see how there would be. You might get a special release here and there. They might. I don't know whether this colorization of the black and white episodes is going to carry on. We had the Daleks, didn't we, last year?
I personally hope not, because it was so awful. I mean, the coloring process itself was okay, but the actual I would not want to see that. And I have been told as well that it has been a commercial failure. Both the Blu-ray and the DVD did not sell the numbers they expected.
Okay,
but that's simply because what they did when it came to the editing, the music, and they'll justify it till they're blue in the face. It was bloody awful. I'm going to say it was.
Logic doing it's not there. I was always interested in what does black and white Doctor Who look like in colour. Yeah. And there were some skilled people on YouTube who were having a go.
Yeah.
And there's 2 or 3 of them, and they would often put a 2-3 minute clip up once a month.
Yes.
And I had those on my shortcuts on YouTube, and I used to watch those and enjoy them. And then I don't know if you noticed, JT, but at some point last year, they all stopped doing it. And I wonder why they're not doing it anymore. And the answer came with the Daleks thing. They'd all been taken up by RTD to work on the Daleks thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would not support any. I mean, all they had to do, it was quite simple, really. If they want to do a commercial release of this, it's just colour the episodes. Don't edit them. Don't put new soundtracks on them. Don't do that. Just colour them, because there is an audience there like us who will go and buy it the way it is. You can even dish out the original black and white versions again, even though we've all got them 3 or 4 times now. But you could do that, and you could put them out, and we will go and buy that. But there is no way, I think, that the majority of fandom is going to go and buy something like the Daleks, which was just dreadful.
No, I don't want to buy a sanitized version of it.
Because again, I mean, you know yourself, again, they trimmed it and edited it and put it together and put Benny Hill music on it for their, a very elusive, imagined new audience.
It's RTD's initiative, that was. Oh. I think the guys working on the tech stuff were working to direction. This is how long it's going to be.
I'm sure.
Yeah, this is how long it's going to be. And I'm surprised Mark Ayres did that music. He must have had a note to say, I want the pace, I want some pace here on the music or something. He wouldn't have normally done that. giving it.
I wouldn't have thought so. I wouldn't. But that whole Benny Hill element, that's where I switched it off.
Yeah,
you have email.
You know.
Yeah, so I was a little bit surprised. I imagine we'll get another one in November because it was hinted at that would be more, because they did that trailer thing, didn't they? With all these.
Apparently, I never saw it because
Yeah.
I switched it off.
Yeah, there's a trailer that comes at the end of it saying, "This is the Who universe. This is what you."
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's been so badly received. Why would you? I mean, it is these people we're talking about, by the way. But why would you put in decent money to do that when nobody's going to buy it? Because the biggest, as I say, the biggest test of this is when you release it commercially. How many DVDs and Blu-rays does it sell to bring the money back in to your investment?
Right. Okay.
And, allegedly, everything's alleged. That hasn't happened. There has been no substantial return. So I'm hearing.
Good. Be good. Because if they're not going to do it the way that we would appreciate it and consume it, then there's no point in doing it, really.
Absolutely. Because the mythical new audience, Andy, isn't going to sustain it as much as the larger audience of Doctor Who fans.
No, it isn't. Yeah, did you watch the Pilgrimage of Mars BBC 4 repeat?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Didn't like that either. I don't like this. I mean, for years, for decades, the original 4 episodes of Pyramids of Mars has entertained generations of children.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they now insisting that the current generation are fickle and shallow and hollow? Just because some adult has written it in a report, just put the thing out and let them follow a story. I can't be done with all this tinkering. Do you know what I mean? It just drives me insane.
Well, it's this obsession with bringing new fans into it. I mean, you've had new fans on your show, younger people, and they appreciate the classic. They've gone through the new Who, worked their way back, discovered the classic Who, and arguably they like that more now than the new Who that they originally started with. So that's how new fans are going to come to it, not being sort of, you've got to watch it like this, and then they watch it like that, and they're probably not interested anyway. It just doesn't work. Logic doesn't work for me.
No. I mean, it's very. I mean, I always say that certain people involved with the show are hypocritical anyway, but I just think also they're very blinkered because they're so desperate. You mentioned there about why the interest in you. It's because they don't want the thing to wind up, and the BBC certainly doesn't want the thing to wind up. The stupid thing about it is they're killing it themselves because it's not bringing in new people. There's nothing there in the stories to attract huge amounts of people. I mean, we were all attracted to Doctor Who because it was a fellow fighting monsters every other week.
Yeah.
You got every 4 weeks or 6 weeks, you got a new story with new monsters in. What was not to love? These days, you don't get that at all.
No, you don't. They're not pitching to the basic instinct of a child that wants to be entertained.
And a little bit frightened. You're not allowed to frighten children these days, it seems. And they've taken that element from the scare factor.
Back in the day, we wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
If I wasn't scared of Terror of the Autons or Claws of Axos or whatever, then we wouldn't be here. The show probably wouldn't be here either.
No, well, no, it wouldn't have done. If it didn't have even you hear from people who were around at the time as little children watching An Unearthly Child, the first episode ever of Doctor Who, 23rd November, 1963, and even the music got them because it was totally different. Yeah. I don't see anything now when it comes to Doctor Who today that is totally different from it. Doctor Who used to lead. Now it just seems to be, we'll do what everyone else seems to do. I don't know what your take on that is, Andy.
Well, that's true of a lot of things in the entertainment industry. It's follow what perceived to be the market leader is, or what the narrative is. Nobody, it's risk averse now, isn't it? And it comes to new content, it's very risk averse. It's not made in-house at the BBC anymore. I don't think they do anything in-house now, drama-wise.
No, because Blue Peter's about to go as well, if it hasn't already. That, and that's the last real show they've got there. Everything else is independent.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all independent. And when you're independent, you become more business orientated. So you're looking at what the market wants. Well, you'd think so, but they're looking at what they think the market needs or what the audience want, and they all try to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You need, when they talk about diversity, you should be talking about different shows to attract a different audience. So
I agree.
Choice. But diversity means something different in today's society.
Yeah,
but no, they're all going to follow a trend because they're afraid that if they don't do that, no one's going to want their product.
Yeah. Or some lunatic alleged activists will axe them or put them out of a job. So jump on the bandwagon and we're going to be safe.
Yeah.
You know, it's shocking, really, isn't it? It's why I keep saying, going back briefly to Blake 7, Blake 7 can never be remade today because it's too much
dark.
Yeah. And when you look at what Blake and we can't say the word, but when you look at what Blake and the others are, the 7 are, they're on the run against the establishment.
Yeah.
In a not friendly way. I'm sure you all know what words I'm trying to avoid, but they're the anti-heroes. That wouldn't be allowed today. And yet Blake 7 a huge success on its first Blu-ray run. I mean, come on, absolutely shocking. It's shocking where we are now, isn't it? Really, I find it worrying all the time.
It comes down to the lack of talent behind the camera, doing the writing, and maybe even the direction. I love shows with atmosphere. Pace is okay if within the narrative of the story it's working. Atmosphere draws me in. That's why the music in the early 70s Doctor Who was creepy enough that made you want to watch it. Now it's overblown orchestrations from Murray Gold, and it puts me off.
Yeah.
You know, can you imagine them doing a drama now where it was like, you familiar with Sapphire and Steel?
Oh, I love Sapphire and Steel. You never get that today.
No, you wouldn't. There's so much like that you would never get.
Yeah. Can you imagine if they I'd hate it if they remade that, because A, they'd recast it terribly, and B, they would zhoosh it up and it'd be all CGI. And the magic of Sapphire and Steel and those wonderful assignments was they were slow and they were creepy because of it. Remember the one at the train station? Oh, please. Yeah. Oh, it scared the life out of me when I was a kid. It really
My wife caught me watching that one, and she just left out the room because she doesn't like scary stuff.
And it's scary.
Yeah,
it's psychologically scary.
Yeah, that sort of thing. It doesn't get made now because people don't think that people should watch it.
Yes,
but the wrong people are making those decisions.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you.
The niche channels are the ones that do the best, like Talking Pictures and other outlets like that. I mean, they don't always show stuff that we want to watch, but they understand that there's an audience there for this type of stuff. And some of the bigger channels have taken notice, but it's slow to change. I think all the good dramas that are being scripted and made are going to Prime and Netflix. Like Slow Horses, I think it was mentioned on one of your shows recently. We've seen that. It is very good. It's a good drama. It's the sort of thing the BBC and ITV don't do anymore.
Yeah. There's so much they don't do anymore. Listen, Andy, I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, but we really enjoyed this. But we have come to. In fact, I've kept you a little bit over, so I'm sorry about that. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on to Who's Views and to Chit Chat.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
No, anytime. We'll have to bring you back on and we'll continue. I'll have to start doing some sequels to Chit Chats now where we're catching up with people. But no, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. To everybody watching, I hope you've enjoyed this and also meeting Andy here. If you are interested in coming on to Chit Chat, give me an email. You can get in touch with me at whosviews1@gmail.com, like this one here did. And we can have a little chat. It's always a pleasure. I absolutely enjoy. And Andy, definitely we'll have to get you back on and just carry on because there's a lot more we can talk to you about, I'm sure. Especially how you're finding the Blake 7 Blu-ray when it comes out. Not long to go for us on that one.
Can't wait for that.
Oh, well, listen, thank you to you. Thank you for you to watching. Don't forget, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. Please make sure you're still subscribed. If you're not new to the channel, give us a thumbs up and leave your comments there about the show as well. We will see you again on Who's Views very, very soon. From now, from Andy and myself, take care, everybody. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.